guys, it's me, it's Spencer. I really miss you all, and I really cannot wait to teach face to face again because this is not ideal, but this is great anyhow. But I hope you guys are all doing great. I'm doing okay. I've just been real busy with work as usual. You know, lots of overtime because being an essential business just means business overload. So that's where I'm at. If you guys haven't watched the video yet, go ahead and go watch that, or you guys are going to be really, really super confused about what I'm talking about. So pause this, go watch the video, and then come back. All right, cool. Now that you watched it, you know, I just want to start with, it's Francis Chan. Those of you not familiar with Francis Chan, he was an evangelist here in the States, and just within the past month, has packed up his wife and his 3 small kids and has moved over to Hong Kong, China, which is like one of the main hotspots for this virus right now. And you know, he starts the video off by, you know, he sits his kids down and he's like, hey, you know, we're going to this whole new place with all of these new people. And, you know, we're taking you out of your comfort zone. So, like, how do you guys feel about that? And, you know, he says, like, his daughters were like, we're kind of sad because we're missing school and our friends and all that. And he gets to his 5-year-old son. And his son, you know, he talks about in the video, his son just starts crying, you know. And they're like, Silas, what's wrong? And he says, I'm just so sad about all the people who are dying in China. You know, and it's like one of those like out of the mouths of babes kind of thing, you know, just sort of, you know, a 5-year-old kid pulling us back to, you know, what our reality is, which is, you know, while we here in small town Waynesboro, Pennsylvania might not be so affected by it, there are, you know, just up the road in Chambersburg, you know, there's a couple hundred cases there. You go east. You could go west to get to Philadelphia, but it'd take you a lot longer. You go east to Philly, and you know there's a couple thousand there. You go to Harrisburg, you know, a couple thousand there. So, and those places are within, you know, a 2 or 3 hour drive. You know, like that's not far from our front door. So it's important for us to remember that while we're not affected here by this disease, it is affecting. There are real people around the world who are affected by this and are dying from this, and it is serious. So, which brings me to around 2. I just want to go back over the 3 points that Francis covered in his video. Which that first point is, don't stop loving. You know, it's important to remember that we are loved by God unconditionally. You know. And so we need to be able to look past our own, what we got going on right now, you know, like, yeah, we can't go out to eat, and we can't see our friends, and we can't come to church. And that's like a big deal for us, you know, because this disease hasn't come and wiped out everybody. You know what I mean? So, so to swing that back around to not stop loving, you know, like Francis said in the video, you know, it's important for us to remember that because we are so loved by God, right, that we need to be like, God, how do you want me to love and serve the people in little old Waynesboro? You know, because there are people here who need maybe not medical, maybe not. Oh, that's the end of that. Maybe not medical attention per se, but definitely like a spiritual counseling, because you know they're at home, they're watching the news, they're seeing all of this that's going on, and they're like, you know, like they don't know how to process it, you know. And you know, Francis takes a very interesting approach to this whole thing. While the whole world is like, or it seems like the whole world is like, this is literally the worst thing that's happened for several hundred years, Francis is like, this is the best thing that's happened to the church in a long time, you know, sort of like what Pastor Randy's been talking about. Because now we have all of these people around us who are open to talking about very, very serious things, life and death things that are important. And so here we are, loved by God, and in the knowledge that we're loved by God, want to serve these people by pointing them in the right direction. Even if that's, my sister's been doing a really great job with this. She's been, whether she knows it or not, she's been taking very good care of my grandparents through all of this. Like she does the weekly run for them to get groceries. And it also helps that she works at Target, so she's like right there. But still, like Stacya's taken it upon herself to take care of my parents and my grandparents by, doing that for them. So that's the sort of thing, you got to look at, like it doesn't have to be a physical thing. It could be like having a conversation or, just offering words of encouragement. It doesn't have to be this big, spectacular, fireworks go off sort of thing. If it is, awesome, but, there's more work. God does more work in the mundane things of life than we either recognize or don't pay attention to. So just be really open to questions you're being asked or what you hear people saying. And and that's sort of gets back to God's will for our lives. Like God's will is that all men come to Him. God doesn't want anybody to perish. God doesn't want anybody to go to hell. And so He sort of puts that in our lap, like, hey, like this is my will. I want everybody to come with me. That's my will. Do that. So our purpose is to show others God and the love and security that comes from Him. The second point that he touches on is to not lose our joy, to stay joyful through all of this. And, for me personally, this is probably harder than the loving part because, like one of my strengths is service, so it's easy for me to sort of go on autopilot and like rake leaves or load groceries into somebody's car, put the cart back if it's like wandering around in the parking lot, because somebody didn't put it back. But, being joyful isn't so much an autopilot thing, it's more of a choice. And the source of our joy is that, God's in control of this thing. Like this virus coming through did not surprise God in the least bit. Like He knew it was coming and has a plan for that. And so we can let go of our control and trust God and allow Him to do His work. And it's way too easy because I've already done this. Everybody's already done this. It's way too easy to grumble about being separated from other people. Isolation is not always fun for some of us. But on the flip side of that, we now have 24/7, 365 free time and access to God. You know what I mean? So, we have all this personal time, and God's like, I want relationship with you, like, come find me, seek me out. And I love the illustrations that, Francis puts in his video of, like the small group atmosphere of church. He talks about taking communion with just a few friends and how powerful that can be, within like communion within like a family setting, people united as a family before God and being in communion and in relationship with Him. Some of you might, if you're like me, like my big thing is if I need to get away, if I need to go be with God, is I'll go for a walk. I have I'm surrounded by like farms and farm fields, so it's pretty easy for me to just, and go take a walk and just kind of clear my head before God and say, this is what I'm worried about. This is what I got mad about today, and just allow Him to come in and show me where I need to improve, what I need to work on, and then just allowing Him to do His thing. So that's meaningful for me, is the prayer walks. Some of you might like quiet room or have some worship music going. So just find what works for you, and just really press into God during this time. And that's the sort of thing like that God designed us for, is that one-on-one relationship. The Bible even says, like God is jealous for that kind of relationship with us, jealousy is not like a kind of emotion, or a feeling. Like if you're jealous, like that's like an intense thing. So God intensely desires this sort of relationship with us, and if we want that. If we want to stay loving, if we want to stay joyful, if we want to stay peaceful, which is the next point, we really have to press into Him. So on that third point, which is don't lose your peace. And Francis talks about in the video, he's like, one of the most numerous commands that God gives His people is do not be afraid. And so one of the verses that he highlights, and I'm going to read that for us, is John 14, 1 through 3. This is while Jesus is comforting His disciples and talking to them about what's about to come, which is ultimately His crucifixion and resurrection. So 14, 1 through 3 says, do not let your hearts be troubled, do not be afraid. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that? And I am going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. And this is an incredible promise for our security in Christ. Is Christ says, don't be afraid. You might not be able to see me right now, but I'm leaving to go and prepare a place for you. And so that whenever I return, I will take you to be where I am. He's not leaving us alone. He says, I will be back, and then you will be with me. And, we really, like, and I also think of, like, Joshua 1:9, Old Testament, He says, be strong and courageous. Don't be terrified. Don't be discouraged, because I am with you wherever you go. And that's Joshua talking to his soldiers before they went into battle. So... And what was it, last Sunday's sermon was talking about how God was a very present help in time of need. So we have all these commands to not be afraid. And so if we find ourselves, watching the news and being afraid and just being like overwhelmed, then we need to take that back to God and say, God, this isn't what you designed for me. Like, you didn't want me to live in a life of fear. Francis talks about in his video, he's like, he says we should be the most fearless people on earth, Like, we know God. God knows us. He's promised to take care of us, Like, and if our time is up, if Christ comes like He says to come back to take us to be where He is, then, great. to live life here is to serve him and know him, and then to die is to go and be with him for real. Not for real, but to be face to face. And I mean, that's awesome. I think Paul says that in Philippians. He's like, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. So if we have the faith, then we don't need to be afraid. God's got this thing wrapped up in a nice little bow. Like we might not understand, where his plan's leading or where he's going to, but that doesn't matter. He's God. He's got a plan. And we talked about our isolation a little bit, and Francis talks about in his video about the church learning to be resilient, being able to adapt and take on the challenges that come up, and so the Facebook live stream has been great. I loved that, and I mean obviously with Spotify and YouTube, worship music is literally 3 clicks away. So we really are able to bring church into our homes, and just have church with our families right now, which is just powerful from a relationship perspective. But as Francis is very adamant on and points out, that does not take the place of the real relationship. So I know this is hard, and sometimes it's easy to be like, well, I don't need to go to church now because I got the live stream right here, and so I don't actually need to go out. But it's no, that's not the point. We're meant to, grow up with each other. You know what I mean? To grow and mature alongside other believers. But along with that, we also have our own responsibility to sort of take our faith by the horns and get control, and not take control, but make it our own. Make your faith your own, because that's what's ultimately is going to stand up whenever. That's going to be the strong house built on the rock whenever the storms of life come. Building your life on your faith will help you. Building your life on Christ and your faith in Christ will help you whenever things like this happen. So I know it's scary right now, and I think the other thing that makes it not so scary is right at the end of the video, Francis is talking about how this is sort of the same thing he's been preaching at his home congregation for the last 7 years. Hey guys, something's coming where we might not be able to meet in large groups. We might be broken up into small groups, just having church with our families. And so knowing that, other believers who have been in contact and relationship with God and praying to him have been told that this has been coming down the road, that, that should give us a little bit of hey, okay, yeah, this isn't a surprise. God's got this under wraps. So thanks guys. I know I just want to finish with, I know things are scary right now, but learn to lean on God whenever things get hard, and allow him to direct your steps, and he'll make things work out. Maybe not the way we see it, but in the long run, things will be fine. Thanks, guys.